You know that feeling. It hits maybe an hour after eating something sweet or maybe late at night after a certain kind of snack, and you just feel kind of off. Not quite right. Sometimes it's like a jittery restlessness. Other times your brain goes foggy, or this wave of worry just washes over you.
Yeah, that's familiar to a lot of people.
Well, what if the food on your plate isn't just, fuel, but is actually having a direct conversation with your stress and anxiety levels?
Well, it's definitely more than just a gut feeling, pardon the pun. The research coming out is increasingly clear. There is a powerful, two-way street connection between what we consume and how our brain and body manage stress and mood.
Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a deep dive into that very connection. Food and mood, specifically zeroing in on stress and anxiety.
And this whole discussion is really built from the stack of sources you shared with us, a real mix. Everything from these huge scientific meta-analyses.
Yeah, big population studies.
Right, pooling massive amounts of data all the way down to, practical advice from health professionals and even findings from specific focused studies.
So our mission today is to try and cut through some of the noise, unpack what these sources are collectively telling us.
Exactly. We want to identify which foods might be subtly, or maybe not so subtly, dialing up those feelings of stress and anxiety. And on the flip side, what dietary choices could actually help foster a sense of calm and resilience.
Okay, let's dig in. Let's unpack this.
All right.
So to get a good picture, we looked at quite a range of sources, didn't we? We had that significant meta-analysis focusing on sugar.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Practical guides from places like the Cleveland Clinic, BBC Good Food, findings from a specific study on caffeine in college students.
A high-stress group, right?
Definitely relevant there. And also a pretty detailed review looking at the gut-brain axis, which is fascinating stuff.
So yeah, it's about bringing together that big picture data with, the clinical insights and the underlying mechanisms. And honestly, one of the most striking findings that really jumped out from that large meta-analysis you mentioned was this strong link between sugar intake and the risk of depression.
And this wasn't a small study, was it?
Yeah.
We're talking about an analysis pulling data from 40 different studies.
40 studies, yeah.
Covering over 1.2 million participants. That's huge.
It really is. It gives you substantial statistical power. And what they found was pretty compelling. Higher sugar intake was associated with a significantly increased risk of depression.
Significantly increased. Like how much?
Well, the number they landed on was a 21% increased risk.
Wow. 21% increased risk of depression linked to sugar. That's a remarkable figure.
It is.
It really underscores that sugar isn't just, empty calories. It might be actively influencing our mental health outcomes.
Exactly. And the source also highlighted that this finding held up across different types of studies, different ways of measuring depression, like using standard questionnaires.
So robust finds.
Pretty robust, yeah. And there was also an interesting sort of nuance in a subgroup analysis, too.
Oh.
It looked like the increased risk might be slightly higher for women, around 19% in that breakdown compared to men, where the association wasn't actually statistically significant.
Interesting. So maybe biological factors or how sugar is consumed or how stress is experienced. Lots of possibilities there.
Right. It definitely hints at areas for more research.
Yeah.
Okay, so we see this fairly strong link between sugar and depression risk in that huge analysis. What did the same study say about sugar and anxiety?
Good question. Was it the same story?
Well, this is where the picture gets a bit more complicated, at least according to the specific meta-analysis. While the link to depression was clear, the overall association between sugar intake and anxiety risk when they crunched all that data together was not found to be statistically significant.
Okay, wait. So based purely on this massive data set, sugar might be a bigger player in depression risk than directly fueling anxiety. Is that what it suggests?
That's what this particular analysis suggests from its aggregated data, yeah. The sources do talk about potential reasons. Maybe the biological pathways linking sugar to anxiety were just different.
Or maybe how anxiety was measured.
Could be. Perhaps the measurements across all those varied studies weren't sensitive enough to pick up a consistent link for anxiety. It just reminds us these connections are really complex,
Got it. Yeah. Multifaceted issues. Okay, so beyond just sugar, though, the other sources, like from the Cleveland Clinic and BBC Good Food, they point to a whole range of other foods commonly linked to increasing feelings of anxiety.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They list what many people might sort of intuitively recognize as dietary culprits.
Like what?
We're looking at things like highly processed foods, fried foods, fast food, obviously, excessive caffeine, alcohol.
Right.
Foods high in added sugars and those refined carbohydrates again, and also trans fats.
Right. Why are these categories consistently flagged as, potential anxiety promoters? What's the mechanism there?
Well, the sources lay out a few key reasons. So things high in refined carbs and added sugars, they cause those rapid spikes and then the crashes in blood sugar.
The roller coaster.
Exactly. And that destabilizes your energy, your mood. It can show up as irritability, nervousness, mood swings, feelings really close to anxiety.
Makes sense.
Then you've got caffeine. It's a stimulant, right? It revs up your nervous system, increases heart rate, can make you feel jittery, basically mimicking anxiety symptoms. Diets high in trans fats and possibly excessive sugar, too, they can contribute to chronic inflammation throughout the body. And there's more and more evidence linking inflammation to mood disorders.
Okay, inflammation again.
Yeah. And alcohol. Well, it might feel relaxing initially, but it really messes with your sleep quality.
Oh, yeah.
And that can actually lead to rebound anxiety later on or the next day.
So it sounds like these foods are kind of putting your body's system into a state of imbalance or like overstimulation.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Which can easily trigger or just worsen those physical and mental feelings of anxiety.
Precisely. They create a physiological environment that's just not conducive to feeling calm.
Okay. And speaking of stimulants like caffeine, you mentioned that study looking specifically at college students.
Right, yeah. This study focused on about 150 university students. Now, when they looked at the quantitative data, the scores caffeine users did show a statistically significant, though actually only mildly elevated, anxiety score compared to non-users.
Mildly elevated. Okay. So the numbers suggest a small link there.
A small statistical link, yes. But here's where it gets really interesting from the study. When they actually asked the students how they perceived caffeine affecting their anxiety.
The subjective experience.
Exactly. The picture was quite different. A big majority, like 62%, felt caffeine had no impact on their anxiety.
Okay.
And surprisingly, a significant chunk, 23%, actually felt caffeine decreased their anxiety.
Decreased? How did they explain that? That seems counterintuitive.
Well, they reported that caffeine helped them feel more focused. It improved their performance, alertness, energy, things really important in a high-pressure college environment.
Okay. So for them, the perceived benefits for functioning maybe outweighed any potential jitters.
It seems like it, which is really insightful, right? It shows this potential disconnect between maybe what's happening physiologically and how we perceive the effect.
Yeah.
Especially when it's something that helps us perform, it really highlights why personalized observation, like keeping that food journal one source suggested, is so important. You need to see how things affect you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you might not even connect the dots yourself, or you might feel like you need that caffeine boost, even if it has other effects.
Exactly. It underscores why, healthcare providers should probably discuss caffeine use, especially with students or anyone struggling with anxiety.
Okay, that gives us a pretty solid picture of what foods might be contributing to stress and anxiety.
Well, let's
flip the coin. Let's pivot now. What did the sources say about foods and nutrients that might actually help us feel calmer, more resilient?
Yeah.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff. The Cleveland Clinic sources and others, they provided a great list of beneficial nutrients and the foods packed with them. They highlighted things like omega-3 fatty acids.
Always hear about those.
Yep. Protein, fiber, various B vitamins, magnesium, probiotics, vitamin D, zinc, and antioxidants like vitamin C and E.
Wow. Okay, that's a comprehensive list of potential allies. Let's maybe focus on a few key players. Omega-3s you mentioned. They're always linked to brain health.
They are, and for really good reason. Omega-3s, especially EPA and DHA, those are the types you find abundantly in fatty fish like salmon, herring, mackerel, sardines.
Okay.
They're crucial. The sources note their calming influence, their role in reducing inflammation. There's that word again. Their importance for the actual structure of brain cells, and they're involved in neurotransmitter function too. One source specifically pointed out EPA and DHA are vital for brain development and function and might help improve depression symptoms, especially supplements high in EPA.
Okay, so making fatty fish a regular thing seems like a really good bet. What about magnesium? You mentioned that one too.
Magnesium. Often called a supernutrient in the sources, partly because it's involved in just so many bodily functions and also because many people actually don't get enough of it.
Really?
Yeah. It plays a key role in regulating cortisol, that's our main stress hormone, and it helps balance neurotransmitters. Good sources are things like avocados, leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and fatty fish like salmon again. Notice the overlap.
Yeah, salmon's coming up a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, and protein also made the list. How does that help?
Right, protein. from sources like eggs, lean meats, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, yogurt. It's really important for keeping your blood sugar levels stable.
Avoiding the crashes.
Exactly. Stable blood sugar prevents those energy and mood crashes that can definitely worsen feelings of anxiety. Plus, protein also helps modulate cortisol.
And fiber. We know it's good for digestion, but how does it fit into the mood picture?
Great question. Fiber, which you get loads of in vegetables like broccoli, carrots, leafy greens, also beans, lentils, oatmeal, whole grains. It serves a critical role beyond just digestion. It acts as prebiotics.
Prebiotics, like food for the good gut bacteria.
Precisely. Food for the beneficial bacteria in your gut, which leads us right into
the gut-brain axis. Yeah, this connection feels like it's becoming increasingly important based on everything we're reading.
It's truly one of the most exciting active areas of research. The review article you shared really dove deep into it. It's essentially a superhighway of communication going both ways between your central nervous system, your brain, and your gut microbiome. Those trillions of bacteria living in your gut.
So they talk to each other constantly?
Constantly. Your brain sends signals down, influencing digestion, motility, all that. But critically, the bacteria in your gut are constantly sending signals back to your brain.
And what happens when that gut community, isn't healthy? When it's out of balance?
Well, that state is often called dysbiosis, an imbalance. And dysbiosis can lead to inflammation within the gut itself.
Okay.
One consequence can be something called increased intestinal permeability, or leaky gut, as it's sometimes called. Basically, the gut lining becomes less selective.
Allowing things through that shouldn't get through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Molecules that should stay contained within the gut can pass into the bloodstream.
And these molecules can actually reach the brain.
Some can. Or the inflammatory signals they trigger can. These inflammatory molecules or signals, produced partly due to that gut dysbiosis, can travel through the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and directly influence brain function and neurochemistry.
Wow.
This gut-driven inflammation is being increasingly linked to the development or worsening of mood disorders, including anxiety and depression.
So an unhealthy gut can literally send inflammatory signals that mess with your brain and contribute to feeling anxious or down.
That's the emerging picture, yeah. It's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
And this is really where things like probiotics, the good bacteria themselves, and prebiotics, the fiber that feeds them, come into play. By improving the balance of your gut bacteria, maybe through fermented foods like yogurt or kefir, or just eating lots of fiber-rich foods, you can potentially reduce that gut inflammation, influence your body's stress response system, the HPA axis, and even impact the production of important neurotransmitter precursors, like tryptophan, which your body needs to make serotonin.
The feel-good neurotransmitter.
Or GABA, which has a calming effect.
It just really highlights how integrated everything is. Nourishing your gut is, in a way, directly nourishing your brain.
It's a profound connection. Absolutely. Now, the science is still evolving. We need more research to pinpoint all the mechanisms.
Sure.
But the potential for supporting mental well-being through dietary approaches targeting the gut is, immense.
Okay, so building on that idea of feeding the whole system.
Yeah.
The sources also pointed to the power of overall dietary patterns, right? Not just single foods or nutrients.
Yes, exactly.
And the Mediterranean diet came up as a prime example.
It did. The PMC review discussed it as a really well-researched and beneficial pattern. You know the basics. High in fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, olive oil as the main fat.
Lots of fish.
Moderate fish, poultry, dairy, even a little wine, and low in red and processed meats and sweets.
It sounds like it naturally includes a lot of those beneficial things.
Yeah.
Just listed tons of fiber, healthy fats from fish and olive oil, antioxidants from plants.
Exactly right. And its benefits for physical health, like heart disease, metabolic health, those are really well established.
Yeah.
But what's particularly relevant for our chat today is the evidence linking this pattern to mental health benefits. Now, it's often studied more for depression, but two specific clinical trials mentioned in the sources, the SMILES trial and HealthFIMD, actually showed that adopting a Mediterranean-style diet led to significant reductions in depressive symptoms.
Significant reduction.
Yeah, and improved remission rates in people already diagnosed with depression, which is pretty powerful.
That is powerful. So even if the direct research might focus more on depression, it seems logical that adopting a dietary pattern that's fundamentally anti-inflammatory and nutrient-dense would support overall mood and resilience, which would inherently help with anxiety, too.
Precisely. It provides that stable foundation. It gives the brain and gut the building blocks they need and minimizes the inputs that tend to cause dysregulation or inflammation.
Okay. So given all this information, which is a lot, what's the most practical advice someone listening right now might take away? It can feel overwhelming, right? You're thinking about overhauling your whole diet.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a key point that was echoed by the dietitian in the Cleveland Clinic source. The most effective approach usually isn't radical, drastic change overnight. It's making small, gradual, sustainable changes. Focusing on progress, not demanding immediate perfection from yourself, that's crucial.
Okay. So instead of saying, right, that's it, no more sugar, no more processed food starting tomorrow, maybe it's more like, okay, today I'll swap my afternoon soda for water.
Exactly.
Or this week, I'm going to make sure I add an extra serving of vegetables to dinner. Simple things like that.
Perfect examples. It's about intentionally incorporating more of those beneficial foods we talked about. Maybe start by adding some spinach to your sandwich, or trying fatty fish just once a week if that's new for you. Yeah. Snacking on a handful of nuts instead of chips. Adding plain yogurt with berries to breakfast. And at the same time, gradually reducing the foods linked to increased anxiety, cutting back on sugary drinks, maybe having fast food one less time a week, being mindful of caffeine, especially later in the day.
Yeah.
And that idea of keeping a food and mood journal, like we mentioned earlier, that can be really powerful because it helps you personally connect the dots. What foods make you feel better or worse?
That makes it feel much more accessible, less like this huge insurmountable task.
Yeah.
Small steps really can add up.
They absolutely do. And it's so vital to remember, as the sources really emphasize, that while diet is incredibly powerful, it's still just one piece of a larger puzzle.
Right, for managing stress and anxiety effectively.
Yeah. Diet doesn't exist in a vacuum.
So the sources mentioned other critical lifestyle factors too, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Prioritizing good quality sleep, aiming for those 7 to 8 hours, that's just non-negotiable for mental and physical health.
So important.
Regular physical activity, finding something you actually enjoy so you stick with it, something that supports your system rather than overstressing it. Engaging in stress management techniques could be anything from meditation, deep breathing, yoga, just spending time outside in nature, pursuing hobbies.
Finding what works for you.
Finding what works for you, exactly. And also managing any underlying chronic health conditions, things like diabetes or hypertension. Those can significantly impact your body's stress response too.
So food is foundational, absolutely, but it works best in concert with all these other healthy habits. It's really an integrated approach to building resilience.
Precisely. You got it.
Okay. So what does this deep dive really mean for you listening right now? Pulling together these key insights, it seems undeniable that our food choices are deeply linked to our mental state. While high sugar consumption shows that strong statistical link to increased depression risk in large populations, the connection to anxiety in those broad analyses seems, maybe less definitive overall.
Right. Although specific things like excessive caffeine, highly processed foods, those are definitely flagged consistently as potential anxiety triggers by multiple sources.
Yeah. But the good news is actively choosing whole, nutrient-rich foods, focusing on those omega-3s, fiber, magnesium, healthy fats, nurturing that gut microbiome.
And that good stuff we talked about.
And maybe adopting dietary patterns like the Mediterranean diet, it really does appear to offer tangible support for managing mood and potentially stress and anxiety levels too. Plus, you get all the physical health benefits.
Exactly. It's about fueling your body and your brain in a way that promotes a calmer, more stable internal environment. It really puts power back in your hands.
It really does highlight that your daily food choices are a powerful tool, something you can actually use to influence how you feel mentally, not just physically.
And remembering that small, consistent dietary shifts, when you integrate them with those other healthy lifestyle practices, sleep, movement, stress management, they can contribute significantly to building your overall resilience against stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. So given this complex and still unfolding interplay between food, our gut, our brain chemistry, maybe even our genetics and individual perceptions, just imagine how much more personalized and effective support for mental well-being could become as this research continues to grow.
Exciting to think about.
It really is. So maybe the question for you to think about today is, what one small dietary tweak might you decide to experiment with, just to see how it impacts your stress or anxiety levels?